Hello and greetings to you, and you. Welcome to Wonderful Wednesday. I, Nana Afua Adezawa the First, Teresa R. Kemp, will be your show host for the month of August. As Queen Mother engages in strategic planning, we're in a new season, season 8, with the theme, If Not You, Who? If Not Now, When? The time is now. This famous quote is meant to inspire you and me and others like us to take action now and not to wait for someone else to step in. The time is now. Let's take stock on all the things that you're waiting for. What steps can you take to make it happen? That's the message. That's it. Do something about it. Rise up, ye mighty nation of men and women. Hey, hit the like, share, and comment button. We want you to go to our YouTube channel also and subscribe. We want comments, shouts outs to our viewing audience. Lady Mo, Ursula Anderson, Michelle, Ernestine, hello, High Priestess Sheshat, Carmen, and Tina from Hot Atlanta. And I'm coming to you today from Atlanta, Georgia. So, Queen Mother, tell us who's on the studio today.
Oh, yes. Oh, today
Yes.
I'm pushing just one button here.
Gotcha.
Today in studio, I'd like for you to know that we have Marla Jones, who is an author and a publisher from Oklahoma, USA. We also
Yes.
have the one and only KJ Williams, who's an author also from Oklahoma. And we have in the studio our own Nana Efua Adezewa, also known as Teresa Kemp. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman is a walking encyclopedia. She will take us on an exciting, amazing journey with stories and narratives about the Underground Railroad and more. Well, greetings to our live stream viewers on Facebook and on YouTube. And I would like to say to you to hold onto your seat. I invite you to get relaxed. Yeah, get your cup of coffee, get your cup of tea. Go ahead, get relaxed for this awesome show. Hit that like button, hit that share, hit that comment button. And if this is your first time tuning into Queen Mother Speaks, we'd like to say thank you because we know that you could be doing something else with your time, but we're glad that you decided to take this time with us. Stay right there. Go to our page, facebook.com/Queen Mother Speaks, or facebook.com/Teresa R. Kemp. Those are our two pages. Go there, click on it, tell us who you are, tell us where you are from. Okay? And back over to you, Nana.
All right. So, I would like to say happy birthday to all those born in August like me. I've hit another milestone. So, we'd like to make sure that with so much going on in the world, they say all these different things are on the rise, COVID-19 and monkeypox. Ladies, I want to know who named monkeypox from the
Wait,
chickenpox.
wait, 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 wait. Before we go to monkeypox, this is the month of August. And
Right.
August is the month that Terry was born.
Yes.
So I think it's time to say, let's take off our glasses and let's sing our happy birthday song. Are you ready, ladies? Listen,
Yes.
you guys out there, we haven't practiced this, but we do want to sing the first stanza of happy birthday to Nana. Are we ready? One,
Yes.
two, let's go. Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday
to
to
you.
you.
To
Happy
me.
Happy birthday
birthday
to
to
you.
you. Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday.
dear Teresa.
Happy birthday. Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday to you.
Thank you, thank you,
to
thank
you.
you. Listen, and many
All
more.
right.
Lord.
Yes, ladies. Well, as you can see, studio audience, I'd like our guest to greet you. So here's Marla. Marla, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Marla Jones. I'm the owner of Doodle and Peck Publishing, in Yukon, Oklahoma, United States. And I'm honored to be here with these incredible ladies. I was honored to publish KJ Williams' book, and I hope you all will check out her book. It's an awesome book.
Thank you. And Karen?
Greetings. I am KJ Williams. That's my pen name. And I'm the co-author with Teresa of Keepers, which you can see behind me here. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. And I'm from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And there is a story behind that name, Broken Arrow. But we won't have time to get into it today. But that's for another day. There's always a story behind a story. So, oh yes, there's Keepers.
Thank you, ladies. We're pleased to have our guest in the house. Thank you for those birthday blessings. And to all of our faithful fans and to all of you, happy birthday to all the August born. Please make sure that you all sign in if you're viewing. Let us know your name and where you're viewing from so that we know to promote the show in those areas of those countries, because Queen Mother is international. Queen Mother Dashanaba, she's in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's crazy as it sounds, I went and met Marla and Karen during our book launching, and I didn't even know I was in Broken Arrow. I thought I was in Oklahoma City. It was a whirlwind week, and you all get to hear all about it. Now, if you ever wanted to be an author, that's where we brought in Karen and Marla and myself, and even Queen Mother. She's been writing. So we're all in different stages and we all do different things. She's written plays that have been performed. She's been writing books, and boy, are you going to be laughing with us today, because her books have funny titles. Ours are I'm a little more into realism. And of course, Karen added historical fiction. So that's what we got to Marla, but you can hear all about this process. So pull out your pen and paper, but if you don't have any, don't worry if you're on your phone viewing us today, because the broadcast will be there. You'll be able to take notes. We're going to be posting information for you on how to, organizations that you can go to. So what I would like to do is let's go ahead and introduce to you KJ. So I think Queen Mother is going to do that. Go ahead and introduce our first guest.
Okay, very well. Very well. I will introduce her. But before that, I want to say a little bit about who Queen Mother Speaks is.
Yes.
And it is a community platform. Okay? A community platform with conversations that matter. We do commentary, we do insights to raise awareness, to inform, to inspire, to ignite, educate, laugh. We give you updates on how to expatriate to Africa, if that's one of your goals. We also do words on newsworthy events. We have conversations and get wisdom from the elders. And we do warm, witty dialogue with our guests, like we will be doing today. Queen Mother Speaks also gives you a winspirational verse. Okay, so Nana, did you want me to do the breathing exercise today?
Yes, go ahead. Because get everybody relaxed and ready to sit back and hear our guest.
Okay, very well, very well. So now, from the Art of Living Institute, about a year ago, we went and visited the Art of Living Institute, and at the Institute, they teach you about breathing. And I want you to know that throughout the pandemic, if I didn't have the Art of Living Institute, I don't know how I would have made it through, because living abroad when things are happening in your family back in the States, it can really make you crazy. But we learned about breathing. And so what we've done, ladies and gentlemen, we've incorporated breathing into the Queen Mother Speaks show every week that we're on air. So now I'm going to ask you to breathe with me, and we're just going to do it twice. Okay, and then we'll let it go. Okay, so how we do that, as we start off, is that we, through our nose, we breathe in to the count of 8. You hold it to the count of 8, and then you release that breath. And we're going to do it twice. So I'm going to ask you to be still, center yourself. You close your eyes if you want to, or whatever you like to do with that. And we're going to go right ahead and do our 2 breaths. Ready? Everyone in studio, let's go. Hold and release to the count of 12 very slowly again through your nose. Let's try one more. In to the count of 8, hold to the count of 8, release very slowly through your nose to the count of 12. Let's go. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. And as we've said, there are so many ways to breathe, and we'll talk about that later, but thank you for that. I hope it calmed you down. I hope you recognize the force of your breath. Okay, we thank you for that. All right, so now we're going to go to our meditative reading for today, and I'm going to ask you to listen with your heart as I read our inspiration for today. Okay, the topic of it is I relax, gather my breath, and rise renewed and ready. I relax, gather my breath, and rise renewed and ready. I relax, gather my breath, rise renewed and ready. In today's world, the human conditioning of I must get it done today or I must acquire this immediately often drives people to their breaking point. Human attachment to acquisitions begins to take over, believing that something outside of ourselves will bring us happiness. We push ourselves relentlessly until we discover there is an ease and flow to life. We run frantically around in circles. When we discover the secret is to let God be God in us, then we can run and not be weary. We can walk and not be faint. I flow in endless river of peace and well-being where all is possible when I open to God. When I chase things, I run into an endless circle of seeking outside of myself. I know I must relax, gather my breath, turn to God, and rise renewed and ready. Thank you, Will, in me, through me, as me, around me, through the Christ within, and so it is. The scripture for today is, they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint, Isaiah 40:31. And that is from Daily Thoughts from the Hill, Hillside International Truth Center, Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Thank you. Back over to you, Nana. Unmute.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay. So today there's a whole lot going on in the world. So I'd like to ask everybody to have a moment of silence because we have fires, floods, war, illness, and we're a friendship. So this is a show about friendship. And usually we've had to cover a lot of different dark topics and sensitive topics. But sometimes you need to talk to somebody about those. So if you have questions, if you have something going on, we're here for you. So please post the comments. And when the show goes off, keep in mind, you can still post stuff on our Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook pages. We got a lot of social media, and so do our guests and ladies on the show today. So we would like for you to communicate and keep this dialogue going. We want you to take, if you go to youtube.com right now, Queen Mother Speaks, you can share this program and start a watch party on Facebook if you like. And each week when we come on, prior to coming on, you can start a watch party. And we want you to share this video with anybody who you know that's been trying to write a book or needs to write a book, because we know a lot of people with great stories. So why wait till someone else writes your story and makes the money or tells your version of the story? If you your family, your friends, your community have a really good story, we want to encourage you to tune in because our guests today are going to tell you about what you need before you approach your publisher, how to become an illustrator. We're going to hear how Marla became an illustrator, an author, and owns her own publishing company. You know, we support women in business, women helping women. We support creativity, boldness, and courage. And right now, more than ever before, we need all these things from you. Don't sit back. We want you to rise up and take part, like I said in the opening. Karen's going to tell us about overcoming tremendous odds. Now, you know our guests from Bunga Data Bunga and the Women in Politics in Kenya, they have to rise up, get brave. And Karen is one of those people. KJ overcome obstacles that she hasn't even told us about because the subject of race and racial dialogue in America and throughout the world is sometimes very sensitive. So the things that she's had to go through, I've had to go through, Marla's had to go through, all the revisions and stuff to make it where it's easily entreated, where everybody can accept it. And it's hard to write stuff if nobody get offended at you. So you're going to hear some trials and things that we had to overcome. So Queen Mother, back to you. Please introduce our first guest, please.
Absolutely, Nana. I would love to do that. In studio today, as we mentioned earlier, we have KJ Williams, and she's pointed out to us already that that is, in fact, her pen name, her name de plume. KJ Williams. Okay, she's a former school media specialist. She is a mother of two, a Grammy to six, and a longtime member of the Society of Children's Writers and Illustrators. She's always loved opening the world of story to kids, and I can relate to that, and perhaps some of you can too. She says, when I began to host authors and illustrators at my school, I saw the profound impact that all of this stuff had to motivate the kids to read and write. So she says, I knew then that that was what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. That's a very profound statement because a lot of us haven't figured out what we want to do, ought to do, should have do. But thank you for that, KJ. Keepers of the Secret Code is the story, she says, closest to my heart. It inspires kids to appreciate their freedoms today while acknowledging character traits like ingenuity, persistence, courage, self sacrificing for the greater good, no matter your race, no matter your culture. Haha. You also, inside of this, you get to think about the obstacles that you face given the race that you may be on. But these are all obstacles that we can all overcome. But this story, Keepers of the Secret Code, this book, it took, she says it took many years of rejection, tears, and rewrites. When I accidentally found Teresa Kemp online 2 years ago, as a direct descendant of the Pharaoh family, I knew that I had been blessed and that my story was going to become a book someday. So the book, Terry and Karen produced together as co-authors, and Karen says we're better together. Check out her author
Yeah.
website at www.booklover1.com. May I do it again? www.booklover1.com. Also, you can get her at KJ underscore Williams Arthur, and that's on Instagram. Okay. I think I want to end it right there, Nana.
Okay. Well, let's
Very
bring
well.
everybody.
Let's bring on the one and only KJ Williams.
Hey, wow, what an introduction. That is amazing. Thank you, ladies, for having me on the show. I've never been on a live show, so I'm a little nervous, but thank you all so much. Well, yes, I was a school, my pen name is KJ Williams, and I was a school librarian for 39 years, just as she said. And that's where I really fell in love with stories. And I watched the impact on students from ages 4 to 11 years old. And I watched as students listened to story And as I read aloud and teachers read aloud, and I watched non-readers and reluctant readers become avid readers simply because of the power of story. And that's when, just like she said, I was like, this is what I need to do once I retire. I had no idea what all was involved. You look at a small picture book and you think, how tough can that be, right? Well, during this time, I would have authors and illustrators come and visit my school. And one such a prolific author was Anna Myers, who's written over 50, and is still in publication, by the way, over 50 historical fiction books. And I always said to all of them as they left, I'm going to write a book someday. I want to write a children's book someday.
Okay.
And so when I said this to her, she said, well, you need to, if you're serious, you need to join this organization because it tells you everything about how to publish, write, author, how to publish, the writing craft. It gives you agents, publishers. It tells you how to write a query letter. Everything you need to know is scbwi.org. And by the way, that's an international organization. Now, you will find regions in every state of the U.S. and in every country. There are regions and local chapters. So this is what I did. I joined my local chapter and began to find out what all was involved in SCBWI. It stands for Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And along this way, they have, by the way, online webinars. They have in-person conferences. So there's a lot of information in it. Now, the one piece of advice that if I could give a new writer or someone who's considering writing is goes perfectly with the scripture you read. Writing and publishing is a journey, not a sprint. I am one of those, set the goal, let's go, no waste of time, organize it up. Well, I found out that you need to go slow and learn the process and really think about it, meditate on it before you make a decision. So after 10 years with critique groups, and by the way, I highly recommend, and so does SCBWI, having critique groups of other writers, and sending in professional manuscripts and getting professional critiques from agents and editors and going to conferences, I met Marla Jones. And it was actually through one of these local chapter meetings. And at the time, she was starting her publishing business, and she was starting with picture books because she is a picture book author and illustrator, which she's going to tell us more about that. And so I just offhandedly mentioned, well, if you ever publish early chapter books, I have a manuscript for you. So after a few years and many edits, this was my book baby. So it's called Can't Not Allowed, and this was the first project that Marla and I worked together on. And it has a Native American theme, but it's really kind of about girls being excluded from the boys' club. So we all know how that is, being excluded from things. But it is fiction, and it is a very small chapter book with just very simple illustrations. That's called an early chapter book. Now, during this time, my mother, who's an avid quilter and a reader and a history buff, she read an adult book, Hidden in Plain View, which I don't have it with me. But Hidden in Plain View was about the quilt codes used during America's antebellum South era and in the 1830s, and it was when people were enslaved on Southern plantations. And a group used quilt designs and patterns to convey messages like you see behind me in these quilts. And my mother was so impressed with this adult book, Hidden in Plain View, she made this sampler here. And you can see there's different patterns, and they mean different things. Well, we were fascinated with this story. And the book was published in the early 90s, and it was amazing. Oprah Winfrey even had the authors on one of her shows at the time. It was made quite the history flash because no one knew about this. Well, during this time, I was at 4 different schools throughout my years, and mother would come and talk about these quilt codes during our Black History celebration in February. And she would bring all her quilts, and I watched kids react to this story. Now, at the time, there was no middle grade. They had picture books about it that alluded to it. And so Mother and I would use these picture books as just kind of a springboard. But there was no middle grade or novel book about this. And in Oklahoma school curriculum, we teach about the Underground Railroad from 4th through 6th grade. So I was a little frustrated, but I thought, no problem, I'll just write this story. I mean, I've got all this background in SCBWI, how tough can it be? Well, as said, it was quite tough, okay? So after draft I was on draft 40 something, and one day, well, let me just tell you, there was tears, okay? I got rejections, I forgot, let me back up a minute. So I would take my manuscripts to these conferences, and I had a Scholastic editor tell me to my face, you can't write this. This is not in your culture. This is not in your lived experience. Basically, I was too white to write the story. But I was haunted by this story because I watched children react from all cultures. And I mean, these kids were from all over the world. Most of them didn't know American history, but they were fascinated with the story because it told of a group of people and their intrinsic fight to self-sacrifice, bravery, courage, to be free, and that we all have a desire to be free. I mean, there were just so many themes that were universal, even though they didn't know the history of the American time period. And I knew this story was important, and I prayed to God to help me. I said, God, after many versions and being torn down and in tears, I gave up many times. But I said, God, please, if you want me to write this story, open a door. So I sat down at the computer one day. Here comes the good part. And I sat down at the computer one day and I Googled one last thing. And I mean, this really was my last straw. I mean, I had spent years on this story. And so this was so exciting. I think I put in plantation quilts. I really can't remember, but something popped up. And Teresa Kibb's museum in South Carolina, her plantation quilt museum popped up. So I'm reading along, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so a lady has a collection of quilts. And then it was just like, oh my goodness, a holy light shined on my head. I imagined it because I am telling you that it said Teresa Kibb's great aunt was Ozella Williams, who broke the story in the early 90s about the quilt code in the adult book Hidden in Plain View that my mother was fascinated with. I couldn't believe it. It was her family story. This was this was a primary source. She knew all the inside track. Oh my goodness. I'm not kidding you. Then tears flowed again. These tears were tears of joy because I knew God had sent me to her.
Yeah.
Now I panicked, and Teresa knows this story, because I thought, oh my goodness, how is this woman who is in another state that doesn't know me is going to feel about this stranger calling her and saying, oh, I just love your family story and I want to write it. So you're going to let me do that. I thought she's going to think I'm a strange stalker person. And who would you trust with your family story? I mean, it's her family history. And so it was a very delicate thing to do. Well, I prayed and paced for 2 weeks and finally got up the courage to call her. And she welcomed me with open arms. I can't even remember the very first words out of her mouth, but I just started bawling. I think she said, are you a believer? I can't remember. And I think, well, we have a connection spiritually. If we don't have a connection any other way, we have a connection. And then we connected on her story. And, you know, I loved her story as much as she loves that story. Well, not quite, but almost as much as she loves that story.
Right.
So then went on 2 years of a year of conversations on the phone, long conversations, emails that went on. And then we tried to send it out. And again, we hit that racial barrier, that cultural mindset that said, oh no, we're not going to talk about enslaved people. That's not politically correct in the
Now, Karen, let me stop you here for just a second.
Yeah.
Marla, when you met her at the SCBWI conferences, did she tell you about the story ahead of asking you to publish it?
I think we might have briefly mentioned it, but not in depth.
Okay. And what do you enjoy the most about the Writers Society? And I assume you all go in your region, which is in South Carolina. I mean, Oklahoma. I'm busy thinking about the book in South Carolina. So in Oklahoma.
I like that when we go, we get all sorts of information. We get inspired by each other. The energy just flows. And the first time Karen talked to me about the story, I knew it was an important story.
Okay.
And I'm a history buff, and I love any type of history. And I'll read you a quote that I found just the other day. A generation which ignores history has no past and no future. And this is by Robert Heinlein, which I have no idea who that is, but I felt like that is so important. If you don't know your history, you can't learn from mistakes in your past. And as an American, our past is filled with mistakes. We're striving to make things better. So I knew this was a very important story and needed to be told.
Right, right. One of the things that was the hardest thing to communicate was that our story, though they were enslaved and had many, many trials, they had freedoms that other people didn't experience. So if that goes back to the privilege, people say house slaves versus field slaves had. So I told them every situation is different. Slavery, just like life, is like a marriage. Some people, your neighbors, could live next door 30 years and you think of them as a married couple and they never got married at all. They've just lived together. Some people fight, knock down, drag out. Some people have loving relationships. Some stop and start. Some are long term, some are short term. Slavery is this way. There's no cut and paste portion of slavery, and all people worldwide have experienced slavery. And they say that I'm an authority, Marla, on white slavery, and that people use my papers around the world to get doctoral degrees in England. And I got something and I sent it to you all that said 16,000 people have used my things within a year. And of course, when you put something out there, you don't know if anybody's going to read it or not. Mm-hmm. So I was really shocked and then pleasantly surprised as I was doing research. But what happens, this story is relatable all over the world for just that reason. There are relationships that are formed in trying situations. And we wanted to bring out, Karen, the courage that it took you to face so many rejections. Yes. And against all odds, you got this story out. And audience, what was so funny is that I have this long list of things to do, which Dasha Daba knows about. And it's funny, it's 433 pages long, ladies. She told me I just needed to delete it. But when I don't get to do things, what I do is I then go back and say, okay, what haven't I done? So before Karen ever called me, writing a book about for middle grade children was on the list. So when God had her call me, I already knew I was going to say yes, because he had answered my prayer, which was, I need to write a middle grade book or a chapter book for children. And
yes, it was such a God thing, such a God thing.
Absolutely. And most people don't know that my great aunt Ozella Williams, that she's talking about, copyrighted the quilt code in 1950, 4 years after her grandfather, who's the child of abolitionists Peter and Eliza Farrow, 4 years after he died.
Oh my.
So then they
what year was that?
It wasn't true.
What year was that? Did she copyrighted it? What year was that?
1950. Wow. And then when she died, Marla and Karen and Dash, my mother, the copyright went to my mother and I. And so we held the copyright for years. So all those books that you just showed are written without our permission. But I haven't had time for lawsuits and things like that. That wasn't my focus. I was honored that people chose to bring this story to light. And I've taken it from that approach, but often they talk about the cruelties, all the bad stuff that happened in slavery. And our story was positive in that the community loved them and they could travel freely from plantation to plantation, business to business, farm to farm, doing metalsmithing. And Eliza was a quilter. So when Karen told me her mother was a quilter, all of us know, no matter where you are in the world, if your mother's living and you're trying to bless her, make her happy, make her proud, have a good relationship, what can we do for them, right? They're so hard to buy a gift for. They have everything they want by the time we're old enough to think about these things. So my mother had passed in 2012, and Queen Mother Dashanaba, her mother is gone, and other loved ones. So when Karen called me, I thought, okay, we'll bless her mother because mine's not here, right, Dash? You know how it feels to want to do something for your mother. And Marla, is your mother still alive?
She is. She is.
Okay. So we'll do something to bless her because
as well.
Hi, Marla's mom. But what happens is we want to bless mothers around the world. And since mine is gone, I felt we're going to bless Karen's mother. We're going to let them, two of them, get together and do some more quote code exhibits for children and seniors and everybody. And this time she'll have a book to take with her.
That's right.
And something to leave. Go ahead, Marla. Oh, she's still She's showing us the book. So the book cover, as you can imagine, there's so many different parts to your book that are very important. So Marla, you can hold the book up with Karen. When we were talking about the book, it was important, the cover, because your cover is the piece that's going to grab the audience. And we have soft copies and hard copies. So I'm going to put that up because you can get either from Doodle and Peck. And there's the information there. And we're going to also have this information posted on our social media. And so we put pictures in there and a glossary. And I wanted to make sure that you understood the context of where my family's history is from, because they had relationships with the family on the plantation, and Peter was even educated. Now, in real life, in our book, in real life, Peter was born when they got their freedom. But one of the things that was important to me as a Gullah person, which is coastal Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina, I wanted the story of plantations and the interactions between plantations told. That was important to me. And also being an Igbo person, I wanted you to know I'm going to do my part. Because many times it's so simple. I can't say it in the language right now, but it's I agree to do my part. If each of us does our part for our culture, our heritage, for people we know who were great, and our family members and ancestors, it's like they never die. So now,
and that is kind of the theme of the book. The core theme is I will do my part. And her ancestors did it at great risk to themselves, even though, as she said, they were in an unusual situation. Their master, Dover, treated them, better than most enslaved people because they had talents and abilities. The thing, I want to just add one more thing, and that is Teresa's amazing history. She's a walking encyclopedia, as has been pointed out already today, but she has put so many things in here. I learned so much. When you write a book, you will learn so much, not only about the writing process, but the topic. And the origin of words just fascinates me, being a word person, and like where the word hush puppy came from, that we as Americans use all the time. And we talk about this, don't we, Teresa, when we visit children? And there's just so many words that came from this time period that we just throw around today that, we have no idea the history behind the words. So there's a lot to this story besides just the quilt codes, which is amazing enough. I mean, I think that is amazing. But there's a lot of good meat in this story. And it's about how we can work together as a different culture and different races and from different backgrounds. It's a healing story. So you're saying on getting, but it introduces the Underground Railroad and the risks they took. So anyway.
No, it's important
Karen,
because
Karen, you have to tell us what hush puppies mean.
yeah,
Well, Teresa could probably tell it better than me, but
no, go
in a
ahead.
nut, oh, and fish basket. We talk about fish baskets here. We go through our little drive-throughs, and I don't know how it is down in where you are in Kenya, but I'm telling you, fish baskets. But anyway, hush puppies. Well, so when the patrollers are chasing them, of course they have the dogs. The tracking dogs. That to me was so scary, and it was kind of a last resort. But they would, before they left, they would make the fried potatoes. Which now, kind of like in a cylinder shape or something, or flat, they would do fried potatoes. And then they would find the plants, and of course, that's a whole nother thing. There's all about the plants in here. I'm telling you, there's so much history in this book. Anyway, and they find a plant that would have a sleeping potion in it, basically. It would make you sleep. And they would fill their pockets or their baskets with that. And then as they ran, and if they got in a desperate situation and the dogs were very close, they would throw out those hush puppies and the dogs would eat them and go to sleep. Therefore, hush puppy.
Thank you, Karen. So
Ah.
now I have the privilege of introducing to you Marla F. Jones. She is the publisher that accepted our manuscript. Karen and I had talked to many other larger publishing companies, and they thought that the story was too sensitive. And I cannot tell you how thrilled and happy we were that Marla selected it. So Marla was also a teacher before she became a publisher. She's an author and an illustrator and listen, owns her own publishing company. So we don't understand the process. So a publisher can't just have one book. You can't eat, the company can't make money. So we get to hear from her today what it takes to reach a publisher, what it takes and what you need to present to get your book published or to get your book rejected. So you have to learn to accept rejection. And I was always taught, and Queen Mother Dr. she also said, you have to expect 30 rejections before you get a yes. But you have to make up in your mind that this is something that's important to you. And as you heard the lady said, the world needed to hear it. So without any further ado, because time just flies here on this show, I would like to hear from Marla, and I'd like her to tell us about her journey.
Hi, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it. I'm Marla Jones. I'm the senior editor and owner of Doodle and Peck Publishing in Yukon, Oklahoma, USA. And I loved hearing the story of how KJ and Teresa got together, because I also believe it's a God thing that they brought their manuscript to me. My past is, and my personality is that I don't like someone to tell me what I can't do because it just kind of spurs me on to do it anyway. And when I got the manuscript for the book, number one, when a publisher gets a book, we have to, of course, we're a business. We have to know we can market it and that it will sell.
Okay.
It has to have interest to a lot of different people. Our company mission is that our books are family friendly and fun to read, easy to read. Now, this book I will not say was fun to read. This book has really nice read aloud ability. But again, my part in this was, even as a publisher, other publishers and authors were saying, you can't publish that. You're white. You don't know. That's not in your wheelhouse. You can't do that. And so again, someone's trying to tell me, no, I can't do it. And so, of course, that just spurs me on.
Yeah.
And I knew it was a story that was important and needed to be told. It's part of our history. Our children need to know our history. Our books, when you send a book to a publisher, you need to know that your story will sell, and not just to your family. Yes, of course, your family, they're going to buy copies of your book. But as a publisher, we are like an investment banker. I am investing real money, real time into your book, and that money has to be recouped by sales or whatever. So it's a must that there's more than your family is going to buy this book. And and I knew, of course, that this book would be of interest to a lot of different people, not just here in the States, but in Africa and many, many countries. When COVID hit, a lot of parents were having to teach their children at home, and we started adding something to the front of our books to help parents use the book in education. And it's called, you see the chain link, it's called Linking to Literacy. And so if you are homeschooling or helping your child use a book to learn, you can go to our Doodle and Pack website, and there's a page devoted just to linking to literacy. And there are lots of our books that have that component in it. I think I've covered everything about what you need to know to send in a manuscript.
Right. So I can't remember if Karen sent, I think she sent a chapter of the book, but usually you have to do a query. So what's an example of a really good query, Marla?
Well, a query would include the things I talked about. It would tell me why anyone would want to buy the book,
Right.
why it's of interest to anybody.
Mhm.
For a chapter book, I would love to see a synopsis that tells me what's going to happen, but in a summarized version. Because your story must have what we call a story arc. It has to start out, introduce the problem, and then resolve itself. So,
because this show, Dashanaba, Queen Mother, she's in Kenya. So we have viewers from South America, North America, Asia, and all over the continent of Africa. So as she was saying, a synopsis is a summary of the start, introduce a problem, a solution to that problem. And in France, they never have happy endings. I don't know why. But the French, they like to leave you hanging, and some books do. And what's really interesting, even though it's a children's chapter book, Marla, all the people who have bought the book, many, many adults, they cry at the end. And I did too. I was surprised because even after writing it, I'm writing it for you to enjoy, but I was writing it. And for some reason, when I read the book, they had me read it over and over and over again. And I'm going to bring in Karen and Dash because, once you get that book accepted, we're like, yay, and you think the book is going to be published really soon. No. When we do exhibits, Karen brings the physical manuscripts.
Yes.
We felt like,
they're like this high.
Yes.
Yes.
And Karen and I had probably gone through, I don't know how many revisions, Karen, before we
I don't know by the time Marla got it, somewhere in the 40s, but it ended up being, I think we finally got, if I remember, about draft 45. We finally, between 42 and 45.
Yes.
Now, I had written some of those drafts before I met Teresa
Right.
and before Marla got it. But so I didn't go through 40 drafts with Marla, but that's the thing. When you get it to a publisher, it has to be pretty well put together. Now, she had a lot of edits because we were working, kind of long distance and things were complicated. But, it's got to be pretty ready because publishers and editors don't have time to teach you how to write it. So you got to have your book really ready. And in the query letter, also one thing a lot of publishers like too is if in the marketing section that Marla was talking about, if you can compare your book to current books on the market, and say why yours is different.
Okay.
And because that's what they want to know. People like to buy different. So you've got to compare yours to and they say something that's been published in the last 10 years. So another thing a writer needs to do, and of course we could go on, but SCBWI teaches you this, you need to read books constantly in your genre, and I think Marla would agree 100% with this. So, if I'm going to write picture books, I need to read 100 picture books today, not the picture books my mama read to me, because things have changed tremendously. So you have to read in your area so that you are up on the market. And then when you write that query letter, then you can put that in the marketing section because she wants to know, well, how would I market this book? Right. Well, it's the next blah, blah, blah. Mine's different because blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's just a little point about the query letter.
Now, one thing I wanted to do, Dr. has been writing for years, and I always try to light a fire under her to publish her things. So ladies, one of the things, since we haven't really had time switching the show and everything to go out and we actually have 67 comments out there from viewers. Oh. Right. And we're not going to have time to go through all of them. But Queen Mother, you have been writing a book and it's an anthology. Tell us about that quickly, because while we've got professionals here, we want a couple of comments to help your book out there. Okay. Even now, ladies, this is an adult book. So for our viewers, we're not specialists. They are specialists down there with children's books. But I've written books for adults also. So go ahead. Tell us about it, Dr.
Okay, one of the books that I have been writing on and I have not completed is an anthology of stories. And it's really about being between a rock and a hard place. And that is a space that many of us have been in, regardless of our age, our culture, where we live. And I chose for a title to the book. I wanted to have a title. I was always taught if you're going to write a book, give a title that's going to grab the reader's attention. Right. So the name of this particular book is Where's My Panties? I'm Out of Here. Where's my panties? I am out of here. Where's my panties? I'm out of here. Now, many of us can relate to that. Many of us can relate to that in a very personal sense. But in the standpoint of from the adults of writing the story, it's about what obstacle were you in and how did you get out of it? It's because when you decide I got to get my panties and get out of here, you've made a real decision. You are definitely between a rock and a hard place.
You got to go right now.
Collecting stories. So I've been collecting stories from, I don't want to say around the world, but I've been collecting stories from various people in countries where I've lived. And for them to write the story, I only want short stories, 1 or 2 pages. And at the end, what is the moral of that story? Right. So being a lecturer, like our ladies teaching at the university level, I've often in my classroom got the students to write a story as their class project. So I've gotten some stories, but then after I got those stories, what I realized is a lot of the writers didn't master the art of English, maybe I should say. And so it was kind of difficult trying to understand some of what they were trying to tell me. And then I brought on people who would edit, if you will, the story, and
Mhm.
we sent it back to the writer. Anyway, it got to be a lot more than I had bargained for. I thought I was
Mhm.
going to get just good stories right off the bat, but
Yeah.
um, no,
Yep.
no, my dear, it didn't happen like that. So, and so in time, I wound up having to hire proofreaders,
Right.
and a lot of those, I think I had like all I wanted was maybe 15 to 20 books in a little book.
Right.
And then we could also we could eventually do another edition and another edition, but try to get 15 good stories in different categories. By the way, being between a rock and a hard place, it could be funny, it could be hysterical, it could be sad, it could be hurtful. Okay. It's a different levels of where you get to be inside of a rock and a hard place. Okay. And so I wanted a few stories in a few categories, and it was difficult to get all of that. So, Marla, I learned very early that writing ain't easy. And especially if you want
No,
to
it's a
involve
craft.
somebody
It
else.
is a craft.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And especially if you want to involve somebody else's writing into what you're doing. So
Right.
somewhere along the way, not going to say I got stopped. I'm going to say somewhere along the way, I put it to the side and chose to work on something else because that's just one of the books. But I do have a children's book that I want to do, and it's really my own story, how a Southern American girl became an African queen.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh,
I know.
oh,
We are
intriguing.
both real
And
queens. I'm
yeah,
gonna
and this
send
is the
you.
first time Nana has heard this. This is the first time
No,
Nana
she
has heard
was.
about that book. So it's a story about me as a young girl growing up in the South, involved in civil rights. I mean, I'm one of the few people that you may know that actually got a chance to know, meet, and greet the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
Oh,
but
wow.
also I must say I'm from the King family of Birmingham, Alabama.
Right.
And we
Wow.
were very involved in civil rights, all
Mm-hmm.
right, from a child growing up. But that's another story. But anyway, the book about how the Southern girl became an African queen is about my life growing up in Alabama
Right.
during the height of integration and
Yeah.
segregation.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I at some point I talk about the man who I married, who became the husband who was a king, and
Right.
how at
In
some point
Africa.
our lives came together.
Okay.
Okay, and the
Now,
man
ladies,
barely spoke English. I'll just give you a
right.
little tidbit. He barely spoke English, so I can tell you for a fact that language has nothing to do with love.
And
Oh, that's
mother, tell them how old you were when you got married.
At the point that, and by the way, I'm from a family of 10
Okay.
in America.
Right.
4 boys,
She's
and
the
then the
youngest.
6 girls came, and I'm
Right.
the baby of the 10.
Right.
And I saw them growing up, and I kind of like didn't want to do that marriage thing when I saw what was happening between them and their husbands, so I ran away. But
Oh,
eventually, after I'd done a lot of things in life, like most women, I wanted to try for my own husband. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did. And that's another story too about
It
getting
is.
to the husband.
If you
However,
are one,
and,
those
and
are
I
some
was
really funny
at the point that
stories.
I got married, I think I was like 58.
Yep.
oh,
First,
wow.
First
first
marriage.
marriage.
Very interesting.
And she
Because
was in Hot
from what I
Pursuit,
saw
ladies.
with men and women in marriages, I didn't want any of that.
Right.
I didn't want any of that. I ran away from it. But eventually I decided I wanted to try my own, and I was fortunate enough to be blessed with a husband. And you know what? I used to say, even to T, I want to marry a king. And what did that mean for me? That meant it didn't mean I wanted to marry a king. It meant I wanted to marry a man who loved me all
Right.
the way. I
Like
wanted a
a
man who
queen.
would suck my toes if I wanted him to.
Yeah.
Right. Great. I was
This
like,
is an
okay,
adult show, so I can say that.
whatever.
So
But
I
you know
was
what's
looking for a
interesting?
man who really wanted me. And if a man decided to suck my toes, I know I will never put my mouth on anybody's foot. But if he loved me enough to do that, that means he loved me. He loved me.
Right, right, right. But let me tell you what was so crazy. Nelson Mandela was one of her suitors.
Oh,
Actors.
wow.
Yes, actors, politicians. Listen, they were all coming for her. She had 5 companies and was the female, she was the entrepreneur of the year, President Clinton's business person of the year for the entire United States. She had 5 companies and she was in 48 states. So we stayed really, really busy. And
Mhm.
basically, I told her She had a 5-bedroom house and her clothes were in all of them. And I said, you know what? Where would a man put his stuff at your house? She
Yeah.
said, well, we'd sell my house and he'd sell his house and we'll get one together, or we'll keep both houses and then we'll live together and fill it with some more stuff. I was just laughing. This was a comedy that went on and on. And
For
as our
years.
viewers know, as women, we have to balance our writing with children, husbands, church, community organizations, what this show wants you to do today. And what we want you to focus on this year is putting yourself first. You have to make sure that you do that, because so often we don't do that.
That's right.
Now, Marla, how do you manage to work on books and edit other people's books? Because you also have a husband.
I do. My children are grown and live on their own, of course, with their spouses, and I have grandchildren. When I started the company, I just decided I was going to do it at my pace. I'm the sole owner. I don't have a partner, so I don't have to answer to anybody for my company. So, and I decided I was going to do it my way. And so I did. My husband retired 3 years ago, I believe. And so he kind of does his own thing and I do my thing. And then we meet up at dinner. And
Okay. Okay, so you do the juggling also. So how many books do you edit at a time, Marla?
well, right now I'm editing 3 chapter books. And it's pretty tough to switch your mind from one book to the other. Typically, I'm usually working on maybe 1 chapter book and 2 picture books because they're all such a long process.
Right.
You're doing different things at different times.
Now, Karen, can you imagine if we were doing the editing for 3? You all see her face like, I can't do 3 at one time. Marla, then listen, what the process for us was so in depth with trying to juggle the reading and thinking about, you have to think about what you're going to revise it to. And if you're writing a book, authors then have to market that book. That's a whole other part of it. And it's something that you have to think about. As our viewers know, I've been doing this show with Dosh for 2 years. And you all have not heard about my 5 books. You haven't heard about the process of writing. And we juggle stuff. But I made up my mind. I called Karen one day. I said, Karen, what's your favorite number? She said, I don't have a favorite number, but I have a number I hate. I said, what's the number you hate? She said 66, because I have turned 66 this year. So I told her, we're going to make that a number you love, because we're going to sell 66 million books. Listen, I have no shame as a market woman. I want each viewer to find somebody who will purchase our book, Keepers of the Secret Code. And I want them to purchase the book for not just your own family, not just your book club, not just the school book clubs, but for hospital in your area. I want it for children who are in group homes, foster care, incarcerated in prison, for men and women, because your adult readers don't always read on an adult level. So this is a great book.
But
And
even your local elementary school may not have a copy of it,
right.
or your local library may not have a copy of it. And they need to know about the book.
Right.
And also the chapters are very short. Teresa and I did that on purpose. I have 4 grandsons, and so they want things to move fast. Their attention span is about that of a gnat, I want to tell you. So, our chapters are just 2 and 3 pages, and we did that on purpose to make things move fast in the story to keep a child's attention. But there's a lot of history in this book. We wanted to even put in more history, but we ran out of time. I just want to say one last thing, too, about a sensitivity reader. I think someone mentioned this. When I did Camp Not Allowed, Since it has a Native American theme, I sent my manuscript to a Cherokee friend of mine and said, is there anything in this book that is offensive to you in any way? So if you do write, especially if you're writing out of your culture, for sure, but in any book that could be a sensitive topic, it might be good to have a sensitivity reader that is their culture to make sure they agree with it. Of course, I had Teresa, so that took care. It's her family story, so she was it. She was everything: the co-author, the sensitivity reader, the historian. So that covered. But you might consider that if it is a. And I just want to throw that out there.
Now,
Can
Karen,
I say a quick word here?
yeah.
If our viewers live in the United States, if you will purchase your book from Doodle and Peck, from the website bookstore, there's no shipping, and the book has been marked down to a discounted price. So 2 good things there. If you're a viewer that is international, it's a little bit different story. You would have to go to a bookstore near you, or there's a company called Ingram, and it's international, and they can get the book for you.
Yes. You know what's and Karen, when you were just saying that about the sensitivity reader, I was looking at Marla's face because she'll tell you I have called her up with some of my crazy friends crying. They're upset. They're angry about a lot of things. So my sensitivity level is not that of everybody's. Your sensitivity reader, you might need to get 5 or 6 different people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they objected to so many things. I think we've heard from at least 5. And I was always taught that if you have one person, a viewer, write in, that represents the opinion of 1,000. And so our book is still hotly contested. And I didn't even get into the fact that I have organized, Marla, hate groups that have written encyclopedias on why this couldn't be true. But I hate to say that my mother died in 2012, my father 2013. But in 2011, they unearthed Valongo, which is Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And our family was our story was an oral history. But over the years, we've collected and gathered documentation. Every generation of our family did AfriCare. So we visited many countries because the people were taken to 82 countries around the world with slavery. Mm-hmm. Every country and every race has had slavery with the exception of Ethiopia and Switzerland. Those are the only 2 countries that have not experienced slavery. Like we think of American people go, well, it's chattel slavery. Well, everybody's had chattel slavery, but we never looked often outside of our own backyard. And so on Queen Mother Speaks, we get to talk about anything we want to. And Marla,
it's a safe space.
Yes, this is a safe space for you to discuss things.
Well, there are going to be haters everywhere, and people who never, nothing is going to make them happy. But right. I want anybody listening to know this book is based on real history. Yes. It is a historical fiction. So of course there are going to be things that may not be exactly to the detail true. But a lot of research went into this book. It has a lovely, poignant ending. You will love the book.
Absolutely. So we want to encourage you to get a copy today. We want to encourage you to get a copy tomorrow and the next day. We want you to repost our video. We want you to share it with people. It is a story that will teach all of us. Everybody learned a lot. And even when I talk about my story, I've known Queen Mother for over 30 years, and she's always learning new things about me and the Quilt Code story and the Underground Railroad. And ladies, she was even, remember, if the Rumble in the Jungle, she's been going to Africa since college. She was selected from being in California as a queen. And that's one of the things that with Karen, I thought about. If we wrote the story in broken English or Ebonics, and Karen then has to read it, a chapter of it, to do that. And she didn't want to do interviews because she had never done that part. But part of selling the book is to do interviews. We
Right.
did over 60 interviews a year, Karen, with the book Hidden in Plain View. But audience, I didn't want to scare her away or Marla as the publisher and go into all the bad stuff that could happen. And you have to be careful. And so I wanted Karen to encourage her to do interviews and to do school visits. And she's done amazing. Sometimes she used to bring me in by Zoom.
Yes, we go by Zoom.
Yes.
And then we brought you in person for the first big launch, and she traveled all around Oklahoma City. We drug her all around Oklahoma City and Broken Arrow and Tulsa, and she was all around Oklahoma. So.
And Karen is really big on independent bookstores. So we want to ask you today, support your independent bookstores, because as you know, reading levels of everybody has gone down, and purchase of newspapers and books. So we have to keep this industry going. I've seen bailouts for airlines, bailouts for banks, bailouts for everybody, but the reading and schools. There haven't been targeted projects to get more school books, new books. Reading levels have gone down in America, and I'm sure, Queen Mother, are you all back in school in Kenya?
No. Today when I went out to dump the trash, I saw a bunch of boys riding around on their bicycle.
Right.
But none of them were willing to ride me.
She has to take kind of similar to mopeds and stuff when she goes places. And so you can imagine you get all dressed up to go to a function and you have to hop on the back of the motorcycle. Now, this is the lady that's used to riding in limousines. So when you go to Africa, your lifestyle does, you saw that, look, your lifestyle does change. And they do a lot of walking. Now, I'm not I used to be a walking person, but I've had to now start walking and get myself in shape because it is rigorous. When we did the book launch, which is also another part of being an author, people get upset with me because I have not launched the book in Atlanta, Georgia yet. I still have yet to do that, Marla. So we have to plan, and I have to carve out special time. And can you imagine they're still in a pandemic mode, ladies?
No, because we're not masking here in Oklahoma.
Right.
And the schools have all started and everything's open. Everything, businesses, it's like, even though COVID, there is a variant of COVID still floating around, a small, it's not, the symptoms aren't as, tough as COVID-19, but still.
The variants are still there. And even traveling or being an author and traveling, you've got to consider these things, but you need to make an annual marketing plan. You have to, whether you like social media or not, it's a necessary evil. Whether you like doing TikToks or not, or Reels or not. And I want to say, I'm so proud of Karen because I looked on her site and she has a beautiful Instagram site.
I'm learning. Teresa's teaching me. She forced me into it.
Very good.
But in a pandemic, you can't do live things. The schools were closed down. We couldn't do school visits. So we had to resort to everything was online. So
as a publisher, it was a very tough 2 years. But God provided, and we made it through.
Good.
Yep.
Good. So, ladies, we've gone over our time.
Yeah, we get to go.
Yeah, well, I want to say this, and I am going to have to jump off.
Yeah.
My adopted father in Kenya is named Baba Elimo Injao. You want to write this down, Marla, because I'm going to come back to you with him.
Okay.
Elimo Njau.
You might want to text it to me.
I will. In any event, today is his birthday. He's turning 90 years old. And I have been sent by my village to go see him. And the driver is here now. So Queen Mother has to step away.
Well, we have to go too. So
yes.
Thank you, ladies. It's been wonderful.
We always end with our kiss. So ladies, left hand.
We're going to end now? Okay.
Yes.
So the kiss is take your left hand and blow one. Take your right hand and blow one, and then both hands. So we're going to do it together. Are we ready?
Okay.
Left
ready.
hand. Right hand. And both hands. And we give away the love because we say love isn't love until it's shared. And we don't know any circumstance around the world. We just want to send love to cover it. Thank you,
Yes.
ladies. I'll be in communication with you. Queen Mother
Okay,
is stepping
thank
out of
you.
the
Thank
studio.
you for the
It was
We're
a
opportunity.
all
pleasure.
stepping out. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.